I'm Marcheta Fornoff with KERA News, and I'm here with John McAllister. He's the inaugural winner of the Dallas Art Prize. John, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Okay, we're going to start off with sort of a big question,
Okay.
but I feel like you're probably going to have a good answer to it, which is, when did you know you wanted to be an artist?
Well, it's something I just always was and never had to make a decision about. It's like, all kids are artists basically, right? And then you sort of get socialized out of it because you start worrying about whether it looks real or what's correct and things like that. And people just start becoming sort of conscious of what they're doing. And I think I just never went through that part, and I just have always been painting, since I was very small, and it just sort of ended up just continuing. I had a few stops along the way where I was consciously trying to do something else, like sort of quote unquote for a living, and including like photojournalism school and things like that. But I always was painting the whole time, so it's just sort of a natural progression of my whole life. So it wasn't a decision. It was like the opposite of a decision, I guess.
Yeah. And so what drives you as an artist? Are you drawing the same or painting the same types of things you were drawing as a kid? What inspires you?
Well, it's just sort of, I feel like, especially once I get going on a series or there's just an endless fountain of things I want to get to, and it's sort of a matter of having enough time to try everything out that's in there. So it's just sort of like a bubbling up, of ideas constantly. So it's almost like I wouldn't say it's like a therapeutic release or something like that, but it's like it's more of a, it's like breathing at this point. It's just something every day I just go paint, and it's not something I have to sort of like search for inspiration. I'm pre-inspired, and there's there's just not enough time to do everything you could even.
That's kind of incredible to hear, because as someone who writes for a living, and I have a lot of ideas, I still struggle with writer's block at sometimes.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's maybe not as big of an issue for you.
Well, I think I could certainly have writer's block at any moment. Writing is so different because it's like you have the words will form in your mind, and as soon as you try to write them down, they disappear. And I find with making a painting, you're always sort of like, it's always there in front of you, and you're sort of working out the language as it goes. So it's not that something you had and you're trying to get back. It's always like, it's also a very malleable thing that's in front of you, where your original idea might not be the thing that you end up with. And in many cases, that's the best way to go. And so it's a very forgiving language, painting is. And so it's not, I've never encountered something like a artist block type thing or something like that. I've had moments in my life when I was younger where I was trying to be a different artist than I maybe should have been, because I was sort of inspired by artists that are not like my hand, like, and by an artist's hand, you mean like basically the way a person thinks, and so that if you say you like Dutch 17th century masters or something like that, you might not be the kind of person that thinks that way and paints that way. And like, as to our earlier discussion of me always being an artist, I think I've always been I think everyone's kind of already a type of artist, and it's a matter of like figuring out what you shouldn't do more than and not stopping yourself from your natural progression, and so it's not a problem I faced. Artist block.
Yeah. So how do you figure out the type of artists that you want to be? Because I think a lot of creative people obviously have inspiration, and I think it's sort of natural to see someone and be like, oh, I want to work
absolutely.
like that.
Yeah.
So how do you take that inspiration and find your own voice, or rather find what your voice is not?
Yeah, that's just tons of trial and error, especially in your 20s. It's like you should try to be every kind you think you should be, and eventually you'll sort of like, you're just sort of realizing as you go along, like, I'm miserable in the studio. Maybe this isn't the right thing, and no more crying under the bed. You should be like, maybe you should feel good at the end of the day. And part of it is figuring out your personality. Like, I'm someone who really, like, a lot of artists will kind of like make a huge mess and then recover the work, like sort of like find the work in it. And I'm very much a really methodical, like, part of the left side of the painting will be completely done without having touched the right, kind of, it's very methodical. And then in terms of artists, like, just realizing that, like, every time I see a Pierre Bonnard painting, I am just totally mesmerized and stand there forever looking at this thing. That it's not just that you like this artist, it's that they're connecting to some way that you think, the way that you like would design something, the way you compose something, the colors that mean something to you, and that despite how much you may like some other type of artist like Velázquez or something like that, doesn't mean that you're that kind of artist, or that you want to make that kind of work. You can like things and not want to do them. Mm-hmm. And it's just over time you weed away all the things that don't work, and then if you keep working, that can be a real stopping point for people if their inspirations don't match their product, the things they're producing.
I'm glad that you brought up colors, because I want to talk about your color palette. You paint these landscapes where it is very, very clear that there's a tree and there's a bush, there are grasses, there are flowers, but they're not the sort of typical earthy tones that you would expect, like mossy greens and browns and wheats. Mm-hmm. Instead, they're sort of almost psychedelic colors, like bright pinks, bright purples. Why do you choose those colors, and what are you communicating with that choice?
No, certainly, like, you could say that I'm painting a landscape painting. Like, it's recognizable as a landscape, but I'm certainly not a mirror to nature kind of artist. And that this partially goes back to the first thing about like how kids use color really expressively, right? They're not concerned with correctness at all. Like, it means almost nothing to them. Mm-hmm. They realize, like, color does affect you greatly and can transmit a lot of information, like it can have all kinds of embedded meaning and sort of like sensational aspects to it. And part of it is just my natural inclination towards those things, but also I realize how powerful they can be, and that, like, certain colors like absorb you, certain colors come forward and sort of aggressive. There's all kinds of things, and then when you can harmonize them, you can really be absorbed. And that's part of what I love about painting, is that it's this thing that you look at, like it's a surface with paint on it, but you are simultaneously absorbed into it, that you are looking through this material, what you would call a landscape or a window or something, like you peer into something that's actually just there on a surface. And color is really a key to that, is more than drawing, And so I choose to go this more like towards the expressionistic, sensational side, because it has like it communicates more like meaning, like a depth or feeling, rather than just, yes, that's a tree, that's a lake, it's it can make you, it sort of directs you to how you should feel when you're looking at this thing,
Yeah. So when you are presenting work and people are out looking at it, are you trying to elicit emotions rather than a memory of, here's what Western Massachusetts looks like?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not like working for the Department of Western Massachusetts Tourism Board. I'd love it there, but it's, it's more about trying to retrieve like kind of like this ecstatic feeling I had, and that's partially living out there now. I mean, you certainly could have this in Texas, like if you go to Big Bend or somewhere like that, where you're just like immersed in this thing and it's overwhelming, rather than trying to draw like a hill and a tree exactly as it was. You try to recall how that felt to be out there, and then use colors that might elicit that kind of response, and so that if you think about, if you're walking around nature and you stop, you're usually stopping because something is spectacular or extraordinary, not because it's ordinary. And so you stop, you look at this thing, and initially you're looking at the thing, the landscape that you're looking at, and then eventually you're just sort of lost in your thought, and it sort of becomes a moment to just think about everything there is in the world. And like that sounds like a good reason to make a painting too, like that it's the thing that stops you and then you become absorbed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're a big bicyclist,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Is your studio out in plein air, or are you working indoors, but you're just kind of thinking back to all of your adventures outside? Where are you working?
Yeah, I have a studio in my backyard, and I work. It's just a white box with. I have windows at the top because they're north facing, so it lets in natural light. But I use lights too, and I'm never looking outside when I'm painting. It's an entirely, by osmosis process of I never sketching when I'm outside, but I spend, minimum probably of 20 hours a week outside. With friends or alone out. I'm lucky for where I live. You can quickly just be completely alone in nature, and just both naturally and through human intervention. There's a lot of lakes and reservoirs and logging roads that you can go and just like be completely lost. And there's a lot of like natural sort of prosceniums, like a foliage just like presenting a lake to you, or presenting streams and large vistas. And that basically is like my I think of that as like the bike is like my sketch pad, or like it's, I don't need to really sit there and take notes, because like I know it's all going to be cataloged in there, because that's always what happens.
Mm-hmm. And I want to quote the founder of the Dallas Art Fair. He said, "John McAllister will be a lasting influence in the art world, not because his work demands attention, but because it quietly earns it, making him deeply deserving of the major art prize recognition."
That's pretty good. I'll have to send him a Christmas present. Yeah, no, that was, I definitely was, as even early on, when I was first showing with James Fuentes in New York, it felt like, I wouldn't say not like an accident that I'm showing in gallery, but I was like sort of surprised that what I was making was sort of inhabiting the whatever the quote unquote art world, because it wasn't my intention to like make what would fit into galleries or something like that. And maybe a lot of people don't think that way either. But I was, just sort of like deeply driven down this path. And like, I think when people do that part will show up, that you're sort of maybe earnestness or dedication to something. And I just know that every time I go to a museum, what I'm trapped looking at is not about sort of like, maybe a bombastic kind of, I mean, my colors are kind of bombastic. There's not really a drive to sort of call a lot of attention to myself as an artist or something, but the work itself will always kind of carry the weight, and like, they mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that would translate somehow to other people,
Yeah. And what does it mean to you to be the first winner of this prize?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked, like, but it's pretty cool that, it was really here, that being here in my late teens, early 20s, where I was really like exposed to the greater world or whatever, when you go to college and there's just tons of new people that you're meeting. And it really opened my eyes to, art beyond, I was really just like watching TV and, looking at skateboard magazines, that was where my artworks, that's where the art was, comic books or things like that. And suddenly, like UT had this big film department, you could check out Bergman and Tarkovsky and all these things. I was just watching like sitcoms, so this is really the place where I sort of like grew up as an artist, really, exposed to incredible teachers and peers and the museums here. I would drive up to Dallas to see, just to see the iceberg painting by Frederick Church at the Dallas Museum and things like that. And so, yeah, to have, it's weird to just like 25, 30 years later to be, it's pretty weird for me. I mean, and very surreal and very warm feeling, of course. Yeah.
And when you say you kind of grew as an artist in Texas, are there any particular things that you were able to maybe shed in your college years that you had thought, oh, this is the type of art I want to make, this is the type of art I want to be, and through your time in Austin and Dallas and just the state in general, you were able to identify like, maybe not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what I mean. Having brought up like Dutch 70, like I was really like obsessed with Vermeer when I lived here, and even Gerhard Richter on the other end of the sort of contemporary scale, or 20th century scale. But I was very much not that kind of artist. But maybe because I had a few great teachers at University of Texas. Daniel Dove and Dan Sutherland, who really taught me how to use color, almost like this mini academy of how to mix paint, how to apply paint to the surface, And I was really fascinated with just rendering, just being able to like paint something. It's like I went through what kids go through at 7 years old, where they start realizing you can make something look real. I was really, because I was really sort of cartoony before that, and suddenly I could render things, and I was just really fascinated by that, and I became sort of especially like trompe l'oeil painting, like even Americans like Pito and Hartnett, and or contemporary like 20th century figures like Sylvia Pill Mangold and things like that, and I just was really fascinated by this, but it's not actually what I could do it, but I was miserable doing it. And I moved to New York, and I was still just like looking at sort of early European painting, and eventually realized I was always ending up in the Impressionist, post-Impressionist period, and realizing how much more facility I had with that. And it was sort of, it was almost like I had to break up with myself from my time here to move forward, And it was like, but it's like, that's one of those really necessary steps. Like you have all the stuff you've learned, and then you have to like it's almost like you form this sort of committee in your mind of what you should do, and you have to like totally go against that, And I went through that period after that.
Yeah, I think one of the most frustrating and kind of hard to accept things as a creative person is that sometimes to figure out who you are and to make stuff you're really proud of, you have to make a lot of things in the beginning that you look back on and you're like, I'm not really that proud of that.
Yeah. And then when you're older and you look at people who are in their 20s, and you're like, I've made all those paintings here. Like there's all these there's sort of a similar things that we all go through. And then you have your own particular idiosyncratic path of things that you make mistakes upon. And then it's essential that you have that. It's a rough period. And it's uncomfortable, and tears might be shed. But if you can come out the other side, it's pretty good.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the art prize, because in addition to like the very nice words about you and your work, there's also a $20,000 cash prize that comes with it. I'm curious what that will allow you to do.
Yeah, I mean, that
with your work.
Paint is, as you imagine, is very expensive, and art materials, like along with everything else, are extraordinarily expensive. And if you can just not worry about that at all, that's that's your entire language is just like handed over. You don't have to worry. It's not even a question anymore. So like something like that is like, it's massive. To be able to just and so like, of course, very appreciated that you would. Just you can buy every color tube of paint you want, every brush you want. You don't have to worry about, you can not look at price tags, and you can, So that is really nice. Yeah.
Probably be a little more free.
Yeah.
In what you're mixing and.
Yeah, you just squeeze out a whole tube, a $70 tube you want.
Yeah. Well, another part of this prize is also the potential to be added to the collection at the Dallas Museum of Art.
Yeah.
Which, as someone who used to go to that museum frequently, I'm curious how that feels and what you know about the process of how they might select your work, or if they will select it.
Yeah, I know of the potential. That's sort of as far as I know, and I don't want to jinx it or something, by thinking, I don't want to get ahead of myself or whatever. But of course that would be spectacular. I like the idea. Like I said, like if you go somewhere when you're a teenager, I'm not even I didn't know. I didn't so much know that there were contemporary artists. like I knew that people made art. But the idea that you sort of, especially when you're young, you see a museum, you think of it as this totally static thing. It's presenting history to you, and like the idea that you would be added to that is just not. It's not even something you brush away. It's just not even a thought. So yeah, that's just wild to me that is even a possibility. So yeah.
And I want to also ask you about the names of your paintings because they feel very poetic in some ways. So, for example, there's beacon beaming, tumult teeming, chorus clamor, and then another one is darksome night beaming.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the process for me is, which has gotten quite quick now, is where it was a long drawn out process when I was first doing this. Was I was trying to have a title where it directs you, but is not a dogma of how you have to think about this painting. And so in that way, I'll sort of look at the painting, whatever adjective just like flies up, and then build off of that and sort of make the whole title act as a homonym, like not an individual word, but depending on where you pause in the title, it might mean something entirely different. What your day is like, the title might change for you, And so that it's just sort of this soft parameter that might casually direct you towards something, and sort of like, if someone happens to see the title and it brings up something, and sort of like, okay, that's how I should look at this. You can look at it however you want, but it's sort of like I'm giving a clue as to how I thought of it, and that way it also, I feel like it's disarming. Like it's okay to be kind of hokey when you, like you could be like sentimental and kind of cheesy even, and you can have feelings and look at this, and so I feel like they're this kind of, and like, and a permission, in some ways, like to be as sort of like fruity as you want about this thing,
Yeah. And so now that you've had this big career milestone, what are you planning to do next?
I mean, for me, it's always just like carrying on. Like it's like trying to get to, I mean, it's just like while you're making painting, you have like 300 paintings pop in your head, and you just try to get to them. So it's always just like, just push on without like overtly like destroying what you're doing, And so like each of these things, like this prize and things like that, they're just these little additive, like, just like, okay, you can keep going, like this means you can keep going, like, and so it's like, anything for an artist that sort of lessens the burden of, can you get to the studio, is really important, because it takes so much time, it's, it minimum 40 hours a week, but often way more than that. And so like, it's just, it's always just like having the time to do what you want to do. And so I'm a very much like an organically shifting artist, I'm not going to, suddenly be painting something, like alligators on surfboards or something. Maybe I should do that. But it's always going to be this sort of subtle shift, occasional larger shifts, but, it's always just pushing on.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.